Hey, welcome back to the Amplified Podcast. As always, my name is Jac Carnett, and as always, I am your host for your podcast today. And so we have been walking through Leviticus, and most of the church has probably never heard a sermon on Leviticus, and I'm guessing even less have, does that make sense? Even less, even more? A lot of people have not read the book of Leviticus either. But it's such an important book because it explains how sacrifice, how the atonement of Jesus, how the payment for sin is a bloody process. It gives us a long description of, the anguish that Jesus faced in a matter of days. And so it's a bloody process. It's a gross process, and there are a lot of rules. But the whole idea of the rules is that you and I never could measure up to those rules. We never were going to get it completely right, which is why we needed Jesus. So that being said, the first few chapters have been a lot about how to set up this new society, how to set up this new people group, how we're going to behave, how sacrifice is going to happen, how all of this sacrifice, all of this blood, all of this atonement, all of this has to be present just to hold on to, this localized presence of God's glory. God's glory, his whole glory fills the earth. It was his tangible presence that was resting. I think it was, the pre-incarnate, which just means the representation of Jesus physically before he was ever born on the earth. This was Jesus before he was born here on the earth as a baby, but we're seeing it now in the presence that exists in the tabernacle. And God is so perfect, so powerful, so just, so righteous. And we had fallen so horribly into sin that in order for God's presence to even be among us, there had to be a certain measure of holiness. And when you've, been really unholy for a long time, that involves a lot of new rules. And so think about imagine someone that's been in jail for a long, long time. They're institutionalized. Institutionalized man. They try to go out and get a job, let's say, in a high-powered business field. There is a whole new strata, a whole new standard of expectations that not only is important to make it in that business, but pretty much everything you know about how to live life before is null and void. So the same thing is being said for the Israelites, where you have this people group that has been in slavery for 400 years. They don't know how to operate. They don't know how to really even clean themselves and eat clean food and things like that. And so Jesus in the Father and the Holy Spirit are trying to teach the people of Israel how to now exist as their own people group, how we're going to treat each other, how are we going to act in a way that's righteous toward one another and really towards the Lord. And so the Lord is concerned about every facet of their lives. He's concerned about atonement. He's concerned about the food that they eat. He's concerned about the sicknesses that are in their midst. And that being said, today we're going to talk a little bit about sicknesses. So the last episode, I think we talked a lot about Leviticus. We talked about leprosy and how leprosy truly, they're addressing the real disease of leprosy, but God is also making a statement about what happens with sin. And we talked about the 8 facets of leprosy that can also be applied to sin in their lives, and how the cleansing comes from the blood and then the oil, how it comes from the atonement for sins and then the empowerment of the Spirit to be declared clean. So as my old leadership in Oklahoma would say, God even cares about their pipes. And so this is the formal declaration that today is possibly not so much for children. There's going to be a lot of amazing stories, a lot of podcasts that absolutely children should listen in on this one. But unless you're in like freshman year high school health, at least, you're probably not going to want to listen to this one today. Because today we're going to talk about how should I put this well? How does the Bible say it? It just says cleansing unhealthiness for the Amplified. But today we're going to talk about bodily secretions. That's a good way to say it. Bodily secretions. That's both weird, creepy, and accurate, which is it's a little bit of what it's going to be today. So I'm going to use a lot of words that if you haven't been to health yet, maybe wait until you start freshman year health or something like that. But today's going to be both a gross one and a fun one. So that being said, these first 15 verses are really talking about male STDs and what to do so that it does not spread among all the people. Because you have to think that the diseases we have today, while we have cured a lot of diseases, we found cures for them, or the Lord has sovereignly cured them as well, probably a little both. A lot of these diseases go back thousands of years. Smallpox went back thousands of years. Leprosy goes back thousands of years. And apparently STDs, I'm guessing, gonorrhea goes back all this way, because I'm guessing that's what they're talking about here, the clap. So I'm going to try to keep a straight face while I read all this. So once again, welcome to the Amplified Podcast. We are in Leviticus 15 today. And you can read it along with me in your Amplified Bible, or you can read it in your Alabaster Bible. I actually don't know if they've made a Leviticus one yet. I know they hit kind of the heavy hitters first. Genesis, Exodus, probably Samuel, and definitely a lot of New Testament books, Proverbs, Psalms. So I don't know if they made a Leviticus one yet, but either way, this is a great collection to start building of beautiful Bibles. They're all beautiful, but this one's aesthetically pleasing to look at. And so I highly recommend picking them up. Obviously, I have a bunch of them, and hopefully someday they can be a sponsor for this podcast. And so, okay, let's get into it. Leviticus 15. When I was I think I was a sophomore in high school, I went to a pastor's kids retreat. Seriously, just a camp set up for pastor's kids in the state of Missouri. There's probably like 40 of us. I'm friends with some of them still. Kind of all grew up and moved on with our lives, doing good things. But there's this college kid that I think he was definitely going into ministry, and the woman that came with him from the school as well, she was a college student. They were dating, and he was making a joke at one point. For some reason, we were talking about tattoos. And he said, yeah, I want to get a real big tattoo on my forearm right here that says Leviticus 15. And she was like, really? And I had never read this chapter, but I was smart enough to know that's an odd chapter to choose. And so now you're going to find out why that was a really funny joke. Thank you, Hunter. So, chapter 15, verse 1. Let's read together. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, here we go. When any man has a bodily discharge, his discharge is unclean. Now, I want to say this first of all. We are likely talking about specifically STDs in that kind of discharge for these first 15 verses. So if you see it only as let's just say it, the discharge of a sexual union from a man to a wife, this is going to seem like a really stringent policy. Depending on, I guess, the frequency of the couple, if you were to interpret these first verses only in that aspect, then they'd really never be able to allow allowed in the temple. And so that's a big reason why. Well, I'll explain it here in a moment. His discharge is unclean. This is the law concerning his uncleanness in his discharge, whether his body allows it to discharge to flow or obstructs its flow. It is uncleanness in him. You should know that 99% of men are still 3rd grade boys, 8th grade boys, and this is kind of funny. So every bed on which the one who has the discharge lies becomes unclean, and everything which he sits becomes unclean. Remember, the Lord is trying to teach them, early on biology and what's the word for it? The spread of disease, diseaseology. That's not a word. Spread of disease, and so whether or not they realized it, if there is a discharge on something and someone else sits on it, in the same way, it's possible for it to spread. And so the Lord, without telling them this is how it would spread, he's just giving them the rules. Whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. A lot of, every time it says unclean, it's not so much saying that you yourself still have mud on you or something like that after they bathed in water. That phrase is talking about ritually unclean. So because you had done something unclean earlier in the day, for the rest of the day, you were barred from entering into the tabernacle area. And it's partially because, you need to learn not to do those types of things. And it's a pretty just, punishment fits the crime. You're picking up dead animals. You probably shouldn't be allowed in the temple for the rest of the day. It's not something we do. But also sometimes people just have dirty jobs, and that's the way that it is. But and it's not the Lord saying you can never come back. He's just saying, come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. So whoever sits on anything which the man with the discharge has been sitting shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches the man with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And if he who has the discharge spits on the one who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Possibly this is even talking about diseases that were spread through saliva. And so the Lord's even trying to protect them against that as well. Any saddle on which the man with the discharge rides becomes unclean. Whoever touches anything that has been under him shall be unclean until evening. Whoever carries those things shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. So, wash yourself. Wash yourself. I'm trying to see how healing gets into all of this, but we may come back to that. Whomever the one with the discharge touches without rinsing his hands in water shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. An earthenware container that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken. Every wooden container shall be rinsed in water. So you have to think they're using a lot of clay pots, lots of clay pots. So clay pots are very, very porous, and so it's going to soak up what's ever in it, and that's not really going to wash out. And so if some sort of discharge got onto that clay pot, it had to be broken. It can't be used for food, can't be used for ceremonial stuff. It shouldn't be used anymore. Break it, start over. But wood is a little bit more resilient in that aspect, and so they were told to just wash it. When the man with the discharge becomes cleansed from his discharge, he shall count off 7 days for his purification. So, like I said, if it was strictly a marital union that we're talking about right here, depending on the frequency, you guys may never be allowed back to the tabernacle. But that's a big reason why we think, or we believe, this has to do with likely an STD. He shall wash his clothes and bathe in his body in running water and become clean. Don't be bathing in stagnant water. On the 8th day, he shall take 2 turtle doves, 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord to the doorway of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. The priest shall offer them, one as a sin offering, the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the man before the Lord because of his discharge. I think part of this has to do, why is this man being punished? Why is there needing atonement for something that's happening to his body? I think there is a level of you were likely somewhere doing something that caused you to have this that you should not have been doing. And so now, whenever you are reaping the benefits or the lack thereof of that event, there has to be purification. There has to be cleansing, and there has to be a sin offering. This is a bigger reason why Jesus came, why it's so great that he was the one sacrifice for all. Because, I mean, imagine if you are someone that's suffering with this, every time you have a discharge, you have to go count off 8 days again. You have to bring another 2 pigeons to the priest. I mean, it's a never-ending cycle of uncleanness and purification, uncleanness and purification. And it seems like over the top, but think about how many times you wash your hands in a year. You wash your hands, hopefully, hundreds of times a year. Your hands get dirty, your hands have to be clean. Your hands get dirty, have to be clean. Your spiritual state becomes dirty, your spiritual state has to be clean. But thankfully, we were washed by the living water when we accept Jesus. And so all of this goes away, except for the fact that you should probably still keep showering. So I, in my Bible, went ahead and drew a line right here because that's the kind of the end of that section. I want to read this as well. The other aspect of it is this, that, what was I going to say? That, we would not have this disease had it not been for the original sin of Adam and Eve. Now, I'm not saying that all of this is Adam and Eve's fault. I'm saying that they were just the first, that we live in a fallen world. And so our fallenness needs purification. And so whenever there's uncleanness that has come upon us, we need purification. It's just as a result of the fall. Same thing we talked about with, menstrual cycles. And it's the same idea that it's likely this would not be needed had we not experienced the fall. And the fall requires purification. So I wrote this down in my Bible as well. Why is the Lord so concerned about things of a sexual nature when it comes to purification? Why is he addressing this so much in Leviticus? I'll read this. Many of the regulations exist to separate the sexual from the ceremonial. Where other cultures included prostitution or sexuality in rituals, God wanted his people to be different. So a lot of the rituals that they're used to in Egypt and that they're going to see among the Canaanites, a lot of those gods that they're worshiping require some sort of sexual act or glory in the misuse of sexuality in their temples. And God wanted nothing to do with that. He is in no way saying that sexual union is wrong. Obviously, God gave it to us. It is one of his most incredible gifts, but it's meant to be between a man and a wife in private, away from the temple, because the Lord is trying to separate the sexual from the ceremonial, because not so much that that's happening is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's a slippery slope of starting to combine the sexual with the ceremonial, where they then begin to get into prostitution and cult prostitutes. And man, we're going to talk a lot about that later on when we start getting into the kings of Israel, because they get involved in some wild stuff. And so I drew a line there. The Lord's trying to address sanitary issues within the camp. It's even going to boil all the way down to, at one point, I can't remember where it is, possibly in Ezekiel, the people are so ignorant of hygienic practices that the Lord actually speaks to them and tells them, when you poop, you need to go outside the camp, dig a hole, poop there, and then bury it. Don't do it inside the camp, just everywhere. You guys, I mean, I could just see God walking through the camp going, golly, you guys got to clean it up around here. Clean it up around here. So, verse 16. Now, if a man has a seminal emission, he shall wash all his body in water and be unclean until evening. Again, just till evening. Every garment and every leather on which there is semen shall be washed with water and shall be unclean until evening. If a man lies with a woman so that there is a seminal emission, they shall both bathe in the water and be unclean until evening. That's just a good idea. Good idea. So, then I drew another line in my Bible. That's kind of all the Lord has to say about that. Sexual union is great between a man and woman. Go ahead and take a shower. When a woman has a discharge, if her bodily discharge is blood, she shall continue in her menstrual impurity for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean. Everything on which she sits shall be unclean. This is a wild chapter. Anyone who touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Again, the Lord's not saying any of this is bad. He's just trying to give them good hygienic practices. I haven't even written anything down. I think the text pretty much speaks for itself today. So maybe we'll start writing stuff down here soon. If you want to, I can draw a diagram for you guys. If that helps you guys, go ahead and leave in the comments. I don't even know where I was. Okay, verse 22. Whoever touches anything on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And if it is on her bed or on the thing on which she is sitting, when he touches it, golly, so many pronouns. And if it is on her bed or on the thing which she is sitting, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. If a man it's funny the way it actually says actually. If a man actually lies with her so that her menstrual impurity is on him, he shall be unclean for 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. So this is not saying that you get to the end of your cycle, say it's 3 days, say it's 5 days, say it's 7 days, whatever it is. And then you count off 7 days. So, for half the year, 2 weeks out of every month, you can't go into the temple. And I think it's saying from the first day, count off 7 days. And on the 8th day, you shall, go through the ritual aspect of being made clean. So, even in the Amplified Bible, let me read these for verse 18, verse 19. So both bathe in water, the man and the wife, verse 18. God's plan from the beginning includes sexual intercourse between a man and his wife, and this is not sinful in God's eyes. The uncleanness and requirements of having of washing were a ritual cleaning and a reminder of the holiness of God, not a prohibition against intimate relationships. So God is holy. God is deserving of our very best, our cleanest selves. And what's great is when it comes to state of our souls, it's actually Christ who washes us. So kind. So verse 19 also says there are rules for cleansing, but no sacrifice was required. Menstruation was not regarded as sinful. So I may have misspoke earlier, but I really think that it's going to get to some sort of sacrifice for... I could be wrong. Either way, it's not seen as sinful. The Lord's just trying to explain the purity practices that are going to be involved in the tabernacle, but also just, you guys should keep it clean. Yeah. So let's move on. Verse 25. Now, if a woman has a flow of blood for many days, not during the time of her menstruation, or if she has a discharge beyond that period, as long as the impure discharge continues, she shall be as she is in the days of her normal menstruation impurity. She is unclean. Now, this is obviously a huge precursor to Matthew 9 and the woman of the issue of blood. She's stuck in her cycle for, I think it was 12 years. And so for all that time, she was not allowed to go and be in the temple, go to, her version of church. She is barred from getting close to the presence of God because of the dirtiness of this world. God is holy. So what does God do? God is not a God that he should just completely disregard us and cast us aside and leave us in our dirtiness. No, Jesus actually comes down and he himself touches us. But in his case, because he is the Holy One, because he is the clean one, it is not her uncleanness that now comes on to him. It is his cleanness that now moves to her. And the moment he touches her, the issue of her blood disappears. She is made clean. That's how amazing Jesus is. Jesus is addressing things that were laid out all the way back in Moses. It's like, Jesus on the road to Emmaus, we're going to talk about this years from now, but Jesus is walking with these two men after his resurrection, and he starts to explain to them how it makes sense that the Messiah should be lifted up to be crucified, starting with Moses, going all the way through the prophets into himself that day. And so the impact of what Jesus did in his life is laid out throughout all of Scripture. Jesus is showing up in every chapter. And I'm not trying to read Jesus into this chapter, but Jesus in his life and actions was addressing specific things written by Moses. So, verse 26, every bed on which she lies during the time of her discharge shall be to her like the bed of her menstrual impurity, and whatever she sits on shall be unclean like the uncleanness of her monthly period. Whoever touches those things shall be unclean. She shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, she shall count off for her 7 days. After that, she will be clean. So that's why I said I don't think it's to the end of the cycle, then count 7 more days. I think it's count 7 days from day 1. Then on the 8th day, she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest at the doorway of the tent of meeting. The priest shall offer one as a sin offering, the other as a burnt offering, and he shall make atonement before the Lord because of her unclean discharge. And so again, this is not to say that what she was experiencing was wrong or sinful, but that she was in an unclean state, and this sacrifice makes her clean. Now today it is Jesus' sacrifice that makes us clean. Thus she shall separate, so many S's today. Thus you shall separate the Israelites from their uncleanness, so that they do not die in their uncleanness by their defiling of my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for the one who has a discharge and for the one who has a seminal emission, so that he is unclean by it, and for the woman who is ill because of her monthly period, for the one who has a discharge, whether man or woman, or for a man who lies with a woman who is ceremonially unclean. So, lot to pack in there. Great idea for a tattoo. I'm sure that you could get saved just from reading this chapter, because the cleanness that Jesus brings to us is so phenomenal. Probably be good to, preach it in tandem with Matthew 9. But, all of God's word is breathed by the Spirit. And so it's important that we familiarize ourselves with all of it. We are called to preach the entire word of God. We're not called to cherry pick. There's nothing wrong with Jeremiah 29:11. But if you as a pastor are only ever preaching Jeremiah 29:11, then you're missing out not only on the richness of the rest of the word of God, you're actually in disobedience, because we're called to preach the whole word. And sometimes that includes stuff like this, because this is real life. So let's move on to chapter 16. This is the law of atonement. Now, there is some interesting stuff. In one of our very first episodes, I talked about how Genesis 6 is going to show up again and again and again and again throughout the rest of the Bible. And that's still true. Actually, Moses and his people are going to be facing giant clans that are a result of that horrible union that devolved from Genesis 6. And we're going to see a little bit of that come in today. Although it's interesting, I think I have the Amplified Bible, period, but there's also the Amplified Bible Classic Edition. And this one, for some reason, changes the word for Azazel to scapegoat each time. I'm going to explain why that's significant in just a moment. But there are edits to the Bible that are made from edition to edition that address, things that we learn about, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, things that we learn about translations as we get better and better at translating the words that we find in the original texts. We can better create new editions. Now, is there anything wrong with the old editions? No, I don't think so. But we can still get better over time. For example, so it's very difficult to transfer Greek to modern Greek to English, which is what the Bible we read today. And so it's just a tricky process. The Lord helps us with it for sure. And this is still the inspired word and breathing, living word of God. But it is a challenge for the translators, no less. So like I remember my professor's talking about, and he's one of the lead translators, the lead editors for the 500-year anniversary of the Tyndale Bible that's coming out in 2027, since Tyndale himself printed his in 1527 and was therefore martyred because of that. Imagine that. He translated the Bible and was martyred for it. All that to say, he was telling us about how I can't remember where it is, but Jesus is wanting to heal this blind man, and one of the disciples asks Jesus, was it his sins or his parents' sins that marked the reason why he was born blind? Let me restate. Was it his fault or his parents' fault that he was born blind? And Jesus says, neither, but for this reason. You know what? Let's just look it up. Let me find it. Okay. Let's just look ahead to John 9:3. Let's look at this real quick. I don't know why I'm going on this tangent, but John 9. This is in the New Testament. We will be here years from now. John 9. I think it was 1 through 8. Healing of the man born blind. While he was passing by, this is Jesus, he noticed a man who had been blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him and illustrated in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is still day, and night is coming when no one can work. And then, as long as I am in the world, I'm the light of the world. When he said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with his saliva and spread the mud on his eyes. And of course, he goes and washes in the pool of Siloam and is then healed. But if you read it in the older versions, it reads like this. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him, period. That makes it sound like God purposely blinded this man from birth so that Jesus could come along 30 years later and heal him of his blindness. Now, God is sovereign, but that is not the way Jesus meant it. And it has so much to do with the punctuation in which we read the Bible. It should actually be read, when you read it properly in the Greek, neither this man nor his parents sinned, period. But it was so that the works of God might be displayed and illustrated in him. We must work the works of him who sent me. So, it's not his fault. It's not his parents' fault. It's not God's fault. It's the fault of living in a fallen world, period. However, I have come. And this is why it's so important that we do the works of him who sent me. The works of God can be displayed in this man. So if you read it in the first way, it sounds like God blinded him so that God could come along 30 years later, show off, flex a little bit, heal him of his blindness, and move on. And it makes this whole theology that sometimes God purposely does bad things to us so that God can heal us later. That's not the God that we serve. We live in a fallen world. Bad things happen. People are born blind. That's life. That happens. There are obviously things that we can do to intercede before and after, but we still live in a fallen world. Period. But it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him, that we must work the works of him who sent me. So God wants to heal, and for that reason, we must do the work that God has called us to do. So all that to say, there are edits to the text that are made over time as we learn more and more about the scriptures. So let's go ahead and get into verse 16. These are like really obscure chapters. Typically, like you're not going to hear a sermon about these chapters probably, but these have been some of my longest episodes in a while. So whatever. Chapter 16, verse 1. This one has, how many verses does this have? This is 34 verses. Okay. Then the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron who had died when they irreverently approached the approached the presence of the Lord in Leviticus 10:1-2. You can go back and watch that podcast. Tell Aaron your brother that he must not enter at any time into the holy place inside the veil, the Holy of Holies, before the mercy seat, which is on the ark, or he will die. For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. So now God is going to start to explain how the once a year atonement is made for the people of Israel. This is not only for, this is not that we need to double up on the sacrifices, but there are going to be a plethora of things that the Israelites do that they never seek washing over, cleanliness over, sacrifice over. And so this is basically for the sins that they didn't even know about, the sins that they didn't care about, the sins that they're still willfully doing. This is sacrifices on behalf of that. And this is where we start to see, how the death of one thing, I'm going to write this down, can apply to many things. So we're going to see how the goats, one goat dying, brought cleansingness for the entire year of sins to all of Israel. And how later on, one Jesus, his one sacrifice, brought about the cleansing of all the world. So it's all packed in there. Leviticus is an amazing story to read. And I think that first verse is just the Bible's noting the time that he said this. I don't know if the fact that Aaron's sons have died is significant for this moment. It could have been. Maybe God wasn't ready to institute this with the rebellious sons of Aaron, but either way. Aaron, as the high priest, shall enter the holy place in this way, with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering and the blood of a ram as a burnt offering. He shall put on the holy tunic. He shall, and the linen undergarments shall be next to his body. He shall be belted with the linen sash and dressed with the linen turban. These are the holy garments. He shall bathe his body in water and put them on. He shall take from the congregation of the Israelites at their expense 2 male goats as a sin offering, one ram as a burnt offering. This is a once a year sacrifice that happens one time a year. Then Aaron shall present the bull as the sin offering for himself to make atonement for himself and for his house. So God saw it necessary for the sins of the high priest to be atoned first, and then the rest of Israel. Perhaps it's just to show that the high priest is not, above the law. He has to atone for his sins just like everybody else. Perhaps it was to show that one sacrifice of Jesus really could atone for everything, because his death did not apply to his own sins because he had no sins. If Jesus had made sinful mistakes in his life and had a ledger, then his death would have been to pay for his own sins, and therefore the resurrection could not have come. He would have been separated from the Lord. That's the punishment. But because Jesus was sinless, his one sacrifice applied for everybody. Verse 7, he shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Aaron shall cast lots, the Thummim and the Ummim, I think, for the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord, the other for the scapegoat. And this is where the Amplified, the newer version, changes it, the one for Azazel. Now, Azazel is a particularly evil case when it comes to the demonic world. So going back to Genesis 6, there were angels that descended upon Mount Hermon, and those angels then copulated with the women of the world to then produce the race of giants. It's all about perverting the line of the seed, because the seed had to come through an uncorrupted family line of Eve. And so Azazel was one of the ringleaders of that rebellion. Let's call it the first rebellion before the flood. And he specifically This is getting to the book of Enoch now, but he specifically, according to the book of Enoch, taught the people of the world weaponry, vanity, and I wrote it down. Weaponry, vanity. I got it here. Weaponry, vanity. Oh, and social disorder. So the working of metals and decorative arts and techniques seem to encourage vanity. So he taught them how to make swords, knives, shields, armor. He taught them the ornamenting of the body. This isn't just like bracelets and like 2 ear piercings. We're talking about it's like piercing every part of your body, and cosmetics like way above and beyond, and eye makeup, and the working with metals. This is all taught by them. Now, if you have pierced ears, I'm not saying that you're living in sin. If you have a couple piercings, I'm not saying that you're living in sin. I'm saying that the original intent of that in the beginning from this angel, this is getting way off the base. Not way off base, but just like way off the text today, was to take away from the raw beauty of humanity, to kind of teach humanity vanity, the love for the above and beyond, love for the self, but also this idea that I'm not good enough the way that I look right now. I need something else to make me look better. And you look great the way God created you. Now, if you are sick, if you are obese, if you are not taking care of your body as you should, then that's a problem. But if you are taking care of your body, then the way God created you is the way God created you. So that goat is given in the desert to Azazel as a separation. Okay, we're just going to get into it. Verse 9, then Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell and offer it as a sin offering. So one of the goats is sacrificed, but the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel, or the scapegoat, shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement for it. And then it shall be sent into the wilderness as the scapegoat, or as the goat to Azazel. In other words, all of the sins of Israel are placed on this goat, and it is then both physically and metaphorically sent away from Israel. It is removed from their camp. It is gone. Aaron shall present the bull as the sin offering. Honestly, sorry, this is such a long podcast. Honestly, I don't really know why this particular one needed both, because every other sacrifice seems to take care of the sins on its own. But this one needed a sacrifice to send the sins far away. I don't really understand that part. I can do some more research into it this week to try to find out. But either way, this is the way God wanted them to do it. And this is the once-a-year sacrifice as well. Aaron shall present the bull as a sin offering for himself and make atonement for himself and for his household. And he shall kill the bull as the sin offering for himself. So the bull applies to the high priest. He shall then take a censer of burning coals from the bronze altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of finely ground sweet incense, and bring it inside the veil into the most holy place. And put the incense on the fire in the censer, so, smoke fills the room, before the Lord, so that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the ark of the testimony. Otherwise, he will die. So I think literally the lights and the glorious nature of God's presence existing above the Ark of the Covenant within the most inner part of the tabernacle was so intense that if they did not have this thick cloud of smoke in there as well, the brightness, the glory of God in that place would kill the high priest. But I think this is also a reflection of what God's throne looks like. That I think David says you exist in thick darkness, that you ride on the clouds, that there is smoke that fills the temple when God's presence enters it at the declaration of Solomon, that God is light, but he's also shrouded in this amazing mystery, and not a an aloofness, not a God is also dark but also light, but that the brilliant nature of God includes all of the amazing things that he's created, including smoke, including light, including burning fire. And so there's a lot going on here. We exist and we love and we serve a brilliant and incredible and merciful and mysterious Father. Okay, and put incense on the fire. Okay, verse 14. He shall then take some of the bull's blood and sprinkle it with his finger on the east side of the mercy seat. Also in front of the mercy seat, he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. So blood is required for sacrifice. Like I said at the beginning, the atonement of sins is a bloody, bloody process. And that's what we get to see in Jesus as well. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering that's for the sins of the people. So the bull was for the high priest, the goat is for the people. And bring its blood within the veil into the most holy place, and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull. Sprinkle it on the mercy seat and in front of the mercy seat. So in this way, he shall make atonement for the holy place, the Holy of Holies, because of the uncleanness, the transgressions of the Israelites, for all their sins. He shall also do this for the tent of meeting, which is among them in the midst of their uncleanness and impurities. There shall be no person in the tent of meeting when the high priest goes in to make atonement for the holy place within the veil until he comes out, so that he may make atonement for himself for his own sins, for his household, and for all the congregation of Israel. Then he shall go out to the altar of burnt offering in the courts, which is before the Lord, and make atonement for it. He shall take some of the blood of the bull and the goat and put it on the horns of the altar on all sides. We've talked about that in the past. With his finger he shall sprinkle some of the blood on the altar of burnt offering 7 times, and cleanse it and consecrate it for the uncleanness of the Israelites. When he has finished atoning for the holy place, the tent of meeting, and the altar, he shall present the live goat. Then Aaron shall lay both of his hands on the head of the live goats and confess over it all the wickedness of the sons of Israel, all the transgressions in regard to their sins, and he shall lay them on the head of the goats, the scapegoats, the one given to Azazel, the sin bearer, and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of the man who is prepared for the task. The goat shall carry on itself all the Israelites' wickedness, carrying them to a solitary land, infertile land. He shall release the goat in the wilderness. There's several cross references there. Psalm 103. So the Amplified also gives us Psalm 103:12, Isaiah 53:11, 12, and then John 1:29. Suffice it to say, Jesus is both the one on whom all the sins of humanity were laid upon, and he's also the one who was sacrificed. Then Aaron shall come into the tent of meeting and take off the linen garments which he put on when he went into the holy place, the Holy of Holies, and shall leave them there. Again, there are specific things, specific people, specific utensils that are used only for the Lord. He shall bathe his body with water in a holy place and put on his clothes and come out and offer his burnt offering that of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. He shall offer up in smoke the fat of the sin offering on the altar. The man who released the scapegoat as a sin offering, the scapegoat shall wash his clothes, not the scapegoat. He's not washing his clothes. The person who took the scapegoat out into the desert shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. Last 2 verses, the bull for the sin offering and the goats for the sin offering, whose blood was made to make atonement for the holy place, in the holy place, shall be taken outside the camp. Their skins, their meat, their waste shall be burned in the fire. Then he who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. So you have to remember, uncleanness spreads, and there is a certain sanitary requirement, but there's also a cleanness requirement from a ceremonial standpoint. And I think about, there's a TV show called Chernobyl and it's just a 5-part series about, the events around Chernobyl in the 80s. And whenever the guys would get close to the Chernobyl reactor building, they would have to then scrub and scrub and scrub, I think with iodine, scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub afterward to get all of that off of them. And even still, it was still life-threatening to many of them. And so the sin of the people, I think of it kind of like that. It's where anyone who came close to it, who touched it, who was a part of the process, has to then wash themselves, because God doesn't want any of that. His kingdom has none of that. His throne room has none of that. He wants his tabernacle to have none of that. So he's very serious about it, because sin is like leaven in bread. You pour just a little bit of yeast into bread. It spreads throughout the entire thing. God wants none of it because it multiplies. So, oh my gosh, there's still more verses. Okay, verse 29. This shall be a permanent statute for you in the 7th month, nearly October. In the 10th day of the month, you shall humble yourselves by fasting and not do any work, whether the native born or the stranger who lives temporarily among you. So when a new person would come into the camp, if they weren't an Israelite, they also had to obey the laws of the Israelites. For it is on this day that atonement shall be made for you to cleanse you, for you will be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall humble yourselves. It is a permanent statute. So the priest who is anointed and ordained to serve and minister as the priest in his father's place shall make atonement. He shall wear the holy linen. In other words, this is going to be passed down from Aaron. Make atonement for the holy sanctuary. He shall make atonement for the tent of meeting and for the altar of burnt offering in the courts. He shall also make atonement for the priests and for all the people in the assembly. Last verse. This shall be a permanent statute for you, so that the atonement may be made for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. So he did, just as the Lord commanded Moses. So, a lot packed in right there. A long time ago, we talked about how the high priest's garments had bells and pomegranates on it. And I talked about, I think there's a Midrash story, which is outside the Bible as well, about how they would actually attach a rope to the hip or to the ankle of the high priest and stand way, way far out in case he died in there and did something wrong. They could pull on the rope. They would hear him hit the floor because of the bells, and then they could pull his body out of there. That's how serious this was. It's very serious. And so there's a lot packed into those 2 chapters. This has been an almost hour-long episode. So I think the next one, blood for atonement, the laws on immoral relations. Yeah, the next one as well is not going to be kid-friendly either. So I hope you're here for the ride, because Leviticus is definitely a ride. Again, it's a lot of rules, a lot of things God's trying to teach them. The idea is that God knows they're not going to be able to follow all these rules, so he's making ways for not only them to be atoned, but also making way for Jesus. And so all of this boils down to Jesus, and that's why we love him so much. So that being said, I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for tuning into the Amplified podcast. We will see you around.